America.
So sing it loud with me. College football forever. College football forever. Downtown LA, Starkville City. 1 week you're up next. Take a dip. Run the rock or let it rip. This game is America. All say, can you sing it with me?
We just stepped on her face with a hot-tail moving across her nose. Whoa, Nelly!
College football forever. College football forever. College football forever. College football forever.
College football is a year-round discussion with these two. Here's JC and Morgan. Mike Morgan of ESPN and JC Shurburtt of 24/7 Sports have you covered. Beginning right now.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. Welcome, everybody. Hope you're doing well. It is another installment of JC and Morgan. We normally do this Monday live. We occasionally do it Tuesday live based on logistics for your humble hosts here. Due to everything that's been going on with the hurricane, we're doing this on a Wednesday morning live. So apologies for our tardiness, but in order for this to go, we obviously have to have a strong internet connection. And our base control here was on DEFCON 1, and that's Phil Molinak's Mad Dog, our fearless producer, who you cannot see, but trust me, is pulling all the levers, hitting all the buttons, and making us go. And he is in Greenville, South Carolina, which has been without power and internet and all kinds of stuff. Thankfully, he is safe. But we finally now are technically sound enough where we could get this cranked up. So we appreciate you being more patient than we normally would ask you to be. And again, thoughts and prayers out to everybody affected by this. I know people in every state that this thing hit, from Georgia to Florida to the Carolinas to Tennessee, and a number of people have been affected by this. And it feels like I've been saying this a lot over the last few years, but you all deserve better on how this has been handled and taken care of. I just, it's unfathomable that you wouldn't have a better response by certain people in high places that you shouldn't be left days upon end without anything. But that is sometimes just the case. So I hope that everybody is getting as back to normal as they can. I know people that are still without power. That it's, again, greatest nation on the planet. A whole lot of resources. What we do with those resources, that's a whole other question. But hopefully everything will get back to normal. And I know a number of people, unfortunately, have already the consequences have been irrevocable. Let's just say. So with that being said, JC, college football. Sometimes one game will just remind everybody how glorious this thing can be. I'm big on things like TV ratings. I've kind of immersed myself in this world for a number of years. And as I said before on this show, 4 million people. This is not like when your dad or your granddad would watch the finale of MASH in the 80s. And there were, essentially the cable was a thing, but essentially there were 3 networks and everybody picked one of those 3 networks to watch something on a whatever night of the week. Now we are so splintered and there are so many options. So you're not getting a 50% share of the country with a regular show or even a thing like the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl might be the one exception. So 4 million is the number I've thrown out there a number of times. The Georgia-Alabama game peaked at over 14 million people on Saturday night. Over 14 million. That I mean, again, I know a lot of this is like speaking Mandarin because most people don't sit there and get obsessed about TV ratings. I can just tell you that is more than virtually any show, whatever popular show there is. And I'll be honest, JC, I don't watch a lot of regular TV, so I couldn't even tell you what is a popular. Like what's the big is NCIS? Is that still a thing? I'm guessing it is. I don't know. The reality shows, some of them do well. The Bachelor, the Golden Bachelor, I guess that does well. Nothing touches 14 million. That's what happened with Georgia, Alabama, and the game. Oh my goodness, the game. It's unreal. When these two teams meet, you and I have talked about. We were both there, although we didn't know we were both there because we were not there together. The Georgia-Alabama SEC championship game. Was it 2013?
2012.
Well, 2012, I'm sorry. So 12 years ago, we were both there, and I think you and I both talked about that's one of the best games we've ever seen in person.
I think we both were at the national championship game too, Mike, in 27 after the 20. It was January 2018, but at Mercedes-Benz, the Tua Pass. Were you there?
Yes,
I was there too.
Yeah. Yeah, most of the big games in Atlanta, I've been fortunate enough to go to, and obviously you have as well. But but this game is just I'm not going to compare all of them because the 2012 SEC championship game, I don't want to be prisoner of the moment. That's pretty damn good with a whole lot on the line.
At
and obviously,
time, best game I ever.
Best game you ever saw, right? I mean,
until the next one.
Until the next one, and then
the Hail Mary, or
yeah. So I mean, like, there's so many ways you could dice up an epic game like that. It's just one of those things where, number one, the talent jumps off the screen. If you're watching on TV, it's always more difficult to really break down a game in person. Now, if you were fortunate enough to be there, and we have a big we've got a number of Alabama fans that listen and Georgia fans, but Bama Stu, like he's big time. He goes to almost every Alabama home game. I don't know what his budget is on Alabama football road trips, but he spends a good deal of his hard-earned money to go, and he was there. So if you were fortunate enough to be at Bryant-Denny, one of the 101,000, whatever it was, that environment, you just can't. It's what's different than the NFL. I love the NFL. I'm fortunate enough to call NFL games. The NFL can't touch that atmosphere. It just can't. It's the only thing that can do that is college football. That being said, when you watch it on TV, you get to see more. it's a better way to analyze the game. I have a very difficult time if I'm in the stands analyzing a game because you just don't have the same angles and the replays and everything. You don't know exactly what's going on sometimes. You're at the mercy of the angle of your seat. But if you were watching on TV, JC, you analyzed talent for years as part of your job with ESPN.com and 24/7. The talent in those games, it just jumps off. It's just different. It's not that they're the only teams with 5 stars, and I guess they're the teams with the most are right up there. No other game do you see the talent, the mass quotient of talent jump off the screen than when Georgia and Alabama play. So that's one. Then you have a 28-0, 30-7 comeback by Georgia. So the ebb and flow. Then you have, again, yes, he's 17. I know people get tired of hearing that, but it does bear repeating. Like when you've got a kid like Ryan Williams who graduates a year early. Now, this happens in basketball a lot, but football's just different. He's 170 pounds dripping wet, and he's an alien. And he just does things that I haven't seen in a while. Forget about the fact that he could be 27, and I haven't seen somebody do some of the things that Ryan Williams does out of Mobile, Alabama. So you have freshmen putting on shows. Jalen Milroe, I'll just tell you right now, as a Heisman voter, I can say this. I have no idea who I'm going to vote for. It could change 100 times between now and then. That is your leader. Jalen Milroe, for me, is your leader right now. That game, total yards, I threw this out on another show, a little prop bet. Total yards, Milroe or Beck, who do you like? Milroe, 491, Beck, 448. The problem was Beck was a turnover machine, also took a safety. Milroe was not. He played a nearly flawless game. There's just so many things to start off with that game, JC, but I'll lead you with one stat, and then I will stop talking here. Kirby Smart, going to be a Hall of Fame coach, brought Georgia back. Has done things that, with all due respect to Mark Richt, who was a really good coach, he took it to the next level. Since 2017, when he kind of got things rolling, Kirby Smart is, against teams not named Alabama, 88-6. Okay, I want you to digest that. 88-6. He had a 42-game regular season win streak snapped. That's an SEC record. Against Alabama in that time, Kirby is 1-6. As good as Georgia has been, if Nick Saban and now Kalen DeBoer and Alabama, if they weren't in their way, there's no telling what type of juggernaut Georgia would be sitting on, because most of those 6 losses have come in huge games, a la the SEC championship game back when we only had a 4-team playoff and not a 12. And of course, even beyond that. So think about that. 88-6 against everybody not named Bama, 1-6 versus the Tide. And with that, I say, welcome, Shurburtt Nation.
Yeah, what a football game. I hate to say I went to sleep.
Oh,
Mike, I had to go back and watch it later. But Alabama was up 30-7. I didn't think, how many teams come back like that at Bryant-Denny Stadium? Very few. I saw Arkansas last year. I will give Arkansas credit. Well, I am leaving out the 2010 Auburn game when Cam Newton led Auburn back from a 24-0 deficit on a Black Friday Iron Bowl. So those are Arkansas came back last year late and cut it to 3. But I thought Georgia was toast. Alabama was dominating the game. The big takeaway I had early was, hey, Kalen DeBoer's offense fits Jalen Milroe a lot better than what Tommy Rees was trying to do last year, especially early with Rees. He kind of figured it out to a certain extent, but boy, he's got a lot of weapons around him, particularly Ryan Williams. And I love Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State. I loved Cam Coleman, who's going to Auburn as a recruit, but I don't know that I would have docked Ryan Williams for being young in that situation, because rankings are supposed to be long-term projections. That guy's a freak. I've seen very few players. I mean, going back to like Peter Warwick and guys like that, that are that good, that young. And then on top of that, he's super duper confident. You know, I mean, he's like, he plays like he's like Terrell Owens out there. You know, just that confident. Michael Irvin, one of the all-time greats. So Randy Moss, you name it. But he is special. And, you know, Steve Spurrier used to say big-time players make big-time plays in big-time games. And he did. And Carson Beck did. And I think when Georgia and Mike Bobo opened up the offense in the second half, if you're an Alabama fan, you're kind of like, well, you're looking at the schedule. Who has real talent at receiver? Tennessee will be a problem going down the field probably. Vertically, you know, you're kind of wondering about that. But then, you know, in games like that, though, Mike, when it's a heavyweight fight, sometimes the other team counter punches and they seize momentum and they don't want to give it back. Credit Milroe and Williams for taking it back because there are a lot of stunned folks there. But Ryan Williams should have been probably the number one player in the country last year.
What was he ranked?
8th.
Wow. 7 players ahead of Ryan.
Fourth by composite. I'm looking at 24/7 Sports ranking. There were 2 receivers ahead of him too. Florida. So it was all right. Ellis Robinson. So it was Jeremiah Smith 1, Ellis Robinson from Georgia 2, DJ Lagway 3, LJ McCray, a Daytona Mainland product, going to Florida 4, Cam Coleman 5, Williams Nwarne at Missouri 6, Dylan Raiola from Nebraska 7, then Ryan Williams, and then it goes on down the line. But you know, so as far as Georgia's struggles, you know, I started thinking about this. Is what if in the 90s when Tennessee just could not beat Florida every year, what if Tennessee had been in the Western Division?
Yeah.
They would have had some more national championships because there were years at the end. They were the best team in the country. Florida would lose to whoever. And we saw the one time Tennessee played Florida at the end, they won. Because Tennessee would get better and better and better and better and better.
Peyton Manning, for those that don't remember, was 0-4. And then T. Martin comes in the next year
and finally breaks the streak. But it was set up because, you know, Steve Spurrier and all that talent they had, what they do, they'd open with 2 cupcakes, you know, Bowling Green and Buffalo or whoever would come on in, and he'd get his timing down with his quarterback and receivers. And they'd beat the crap out of them and everybody'd play. Oh, then it's Tennessee week. You know, here we go, you know, and they'd usually win the game. But what if they were in different divisions and played infrequently? Would Tennessee have been looking at the 1-6 type of record when they played Florida, but then also had more in the trophy case because there were some years they didn't have to necessarily go through Florida. So that's kind of another thing. Looking back on it, going down to your home state again. What about Miami, Florida State in the 90s? All those games.
Oh, 2 wide rights.
Lost with the wide right.
2 wide
right, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's
Bobby Bowden could have been sitting on a couple more.
Shoot, they could not. Now we have a playoff, so you know it sort of is what it is. But Florida State just could not beat Miami for a long, long time. No matter what, they beat them in '89, but you know, all those great FSU teams in 86, 87, 88, 90, 91, 92, up until 93, when they had the breakthrough, they beat Miami and Tallahassee and they won it all. And so these things happen to great programs, and Georgia's a great program. And here's another thing. I don't think Kirby's had Alabama in Athens at all because of the scheduling stuff. I know they went to Tuscaloosa in 2020. They went to Tuscaloosa again this year. Otherwise, they've played in the SEC championship game in Atlanta every time, or they played in Indianapolis the one time and he won. So, you know, I don't know that I'd read too much into it because everything's either been in Tuscaloosa or in Atlanta, and Atlanta is a kind of a home. I mean, I was at that both those Georgia-Bama games, like you mentioned. One was at the Georgia Dome, RIP, and one was at Mercedes-Benz. It was about the Georgia Dome game was about 65-35 Georgia, and then the national championship game was 70-30 because by that point, Alabama had played for the national championship how many times? It was not new for that fan base, and Georgia gobbled a bunch of tickets up. But it, you know, so maybe it's not you know, I know Georgia fans want to win the game. I'm not going to rule out that they see each other again. I learned a lot more about the Dogs than necessarily I did the Crimson Tide, because to me all year, Alabama's looked like Alabama. People want to hold the whatever they did against USF the first couple of quarters. You know, a team obviously last year they struggled mightily with that came in there confident. Now, people want to hold that against them. No, I mean, they went to Wisconsin, took care of business. Wisconsin's probably not as bad as I thought. They're not good, but they're not that bad. They played a good game against Southern Cal, and then we saw what happened. Milroe is a handful. That offense is a handful for whoever. Kalen DeBoer, people forget about this. He is an elite offensive coach. He moves the ball against everybody, you know? And so, and look, I'll say this too about DeBoer. Everybody's talking about like his record against Dan Lanning and Steve Sarkisian. I'm sorry. I have a lot of respect for Sark and the job he's done at Texas, and I like Dan Lanning a lot. You know, I just don't think that's even relevant right now. You know, the same group was sitting there talking about how Mike Norvell turned down the Bama job last year. Maybe he did. That would have been a huge mistake. But I absolutely believe Greg Byrne from Alabama, for a change, because sometimes they screw it up. You're familiar with the Florida program, obviously. Look at how they've replaced Steve Spurrier. You know, no offense to Ron Zook, but sometimes Greg Byrne hired the absolute best coach he possibly could. The guy's 108-12. 108-12. And he makes the right moves. You know, sometimes guys, Saban even said this, sometimes guys come in and they want to change everything, or they fight the history. Even Urban Meyer did it at Florida, he said in that documentary. Kalen DeBoer is just an old South Dakota guy, just a ball coach. Comes in, he's tweaked some things, loosened up some things, kept some things, embraced the past. He doesn't care. He doesn't care that he's the guy that follows the guy. He just wins football games. He's a machine. and I think this is going to play out as we go along. The rumors of maybe in a couple of years we'll see something different, but the rumors of the death of the mighty Tide have been greatly exaggerated.
I'm glad you brought up the Mike Norvell thing too, because you know I've gone over this 100 different ways on this show and others about ADs and their perceived role and the reality, and the perceived power and the reality. There's no question Alabama was looking at Mike Norvell and basically got him a raise at Florida State. There's no question that happened. Either that or it was the biggest conspiracy, you know, Jimmy Sexton type, you know, propaganda thing out there. I don't believe that. I mean, I really think Mike Norvell was the guy, and probably not the only one that they kicked the tires on. And now Mike Norvell, they're talking, and I think it's silly, but they are talking about what's the buyout of Mike Norvell. It's insane. Don't even think about it, Seminole fans. It's not happening.
They're suing their conference over money.
Yeah, it has not been a great 12 months. No, I'll forget 12. Whatever the day was that they got, you and I did the show live, that selection day.
Yeah.
And I told people I thought Alabama was going to get in over Florida State. And then like an hour later, that's exactly what happened. And from that day forward, then you lose to Georgia by like 60 points in your bowl game. And then since then, you know, from losing to Georgia Tech, and again, I thought that was less about Georgia Tech being good. They're not very good. You notice nobody's talking about Georgia Tech anymore. I can tell you in Atlanta, it's back to usual, where Georgia Tech is, you know, on page 8C of the sports page. It was more about what Florida State was and what DJU was, and so they're an absolute mess. And they're playing Clemson in what was supposed to be this huge game, and like, nobody's even thinking about it. It's not moving the needle. By the way, if you want to know a good weekend of college football, look at October 12th. The games are freaking scary.
Oh, yeah. I've been somebody, I think Josh Pate said, I wouldn't go to my own wedding on October 12th.
Yeah.
Or somebody on X said that over the summer. Yeah, I mean, keep an eye on, you know, sometimes teams will start bad and they make a change at quarterback and things amazingly get better. I don't see that with this Florida State team. I think there are issues. I think DJU on offense is probably the main issue. I think what happened to Eric Musselman for Arkansas men's basketball last year happened to Mike Norvell. bad batch of portal guys. Not the
Absolutely.
same types of dudes. And look, they took a lot of guys from Alabama and Georgia that had big names and all that, but I don't know how much research they did on it. And that's on the personnel guy, by the way. And I blame him, the general manager down there. I will blame him. I don't think Mike Norvell's forgot how to coach and his staff's forgotten how to coach. I mean, the guy won big at Memphis. He was great at Arizona State as the OC. I think their player personnel guy, who, by the way, as it goes, and I talked to another player personnel guy over the weekend, I don't know of too many guys in that general manager role in college football these days that are taking photos of themselves on the sidelines when they beat Cal by 5 points at home, 14-9, with a team they've assembled, bragging about how it's their 100th win. Buddy, you didn't win anything.
Yeah.
Your title is general manager, but believe me, I know exactly what these jobs are. And they're so, hey man, deal with this so I don't have to, as the coach. They don't, and then they can I don't want to say weasel, but they can squeeze their evaluations in. And if a coach listens to them, it's on that guy. I mean, I would make a change if I were Mike Norvell, because you want to avoid this moving forward. Florida State's going to get in the portal. That's kind of how they've resurrected their program. They have the funds to go do it. They're a good brand, a great brand. They can go attract guys. They're in the ACC right now. You can go get other old SEC players and mold them and be good. We've seen that. Look at what Keon Coleman and those guys did. But you can't get a bad batch of them, and you can't base a portal class on hype. And I think that's exactly what they did.
Yeah,
they cost them. Cost them.
They lost their heartbeat in Jordan Travis. You weren't going to replace him, but I mean, they were in the Cam Ward sweepstakes. I will say that. So they did have a dude targeted, but he chose Miami. And if your plan B is a guy that is DJU, like, my goodness, that's not a plan B. That is a well, we missed on too many guys, and this is the best guy we can get. Yeah. And then I always talk about this when it comes to some of these programs. My theory on this, the swaggerific programs. I mean, when things are going well now, and anybody who's competed in any type of sports, hell, it could be rec league stuff. It could be intramurals. You don't have to even be a Division I athlete to know this. Anybody who's competed knows that there are certain teammates and guys that you've competed with that are terrific front runners. When things are going well, they're your buddy. They're buying you a beer after the game, if you're old enough. They're giving you, they're dabbing you, they're hugging you. Oh, everything's great. And then the moment things start going south, you just sense like, oh, we're not buddies anymore. Oh, okay, you're pointing the finger at me. You're talking behind my back. You're doing this. You're doing that, and all of a sudden, all that swagger turns toxic. And I've seen it over the years with Miami, and I think you're seeing it with Florida State. Florida State's good enough where they should be more than what they are. But the moment they realize, okay, they're out of this thing, you have to question some of the effort, quite frankly. They're not just losing these games purely on talent. Mm-hmm. It looks like a team that wants to go home.
They got the doors blown off of them in Dallas.
That's an excuse. But I mean, watching some of the highlights of that game, I can't sit here and say I watched 4 hours of SMU, Florida State. SMU already had to bench their starting quarterback. SMU does not have near the talent that Florida State does on paper. Florida State laid down. They just did. And I don't know if they're going to give max effort against Clemson. I don't know, but you see this in the college game more than anywhere because, again, these guys, well, they are getting salaries, many of them, but it's not like the NFL, like you're playing for your next job necessarily. And the air has been let out of that balloon. I got to say one more thing, and then we got to get to break. We got to get to the JC5. We got to get to the boss. We got to get to G5 John. These are people I really like and respect, and we've had on this show and will continue to have on the show. But if you raced to your keyboard after that Georgia-Alabama game, and the first thing you wanted to let everybody know was, what an outstanding game. Gosh, it would have been even better if we didn't expand the playoff. Dudette, sometimes it's okay to admit that you might be a little wrong on something. The whole what's the word I'm looking for? Implication when those things were said, and we've debated it on this show, was, well, yeah, it's going to deflate the regular season matchups. Let me ask you, JC, as you're watching that game, did you see anything but maximum effort? Did you see anything but maximum emotion? Did you see anything but the 100% blood, sweat, and tears that they were playing it like it was a national championship game? Did you see anything less than that? Did you see guys thinking, well, this is a kind of a big game, but the good thing is we're still going to make the playoffs, so it's really not that big. So I'm not really too worried about it. Did you see any of that when you watched that game?
No, and you're not going to. And I know who you're talking about, and I love those guys.
It's multiple people. It's multiple people.
I got
people
two
that I
in
like.
mind that I really love and respect, and they're not going to change their opinion. I mean, they're kind of just like, I mean, they've been. I like it that they've been consistent. I just don't think that if you're consistent and you're kind of an outlier opinion wise, that it necessarily relates to everything, you know. Sometimes I get on kicks though, and I try to relate everything. So I get it, but no, I don't think it has anything to do with you. We're never going to see in college football an NFL like September and October. And I watch the Bears every daggum weekend, and sometimes I just don't want to. And it's not because it's the Bears either. It's just, well, all these games are 21-16, and they always punt on 4th and 1, most of them. And yeah, I mean, it's just like they're in the eye, you know. And so I think that, and then I think, but then the NFL playoffs are the most exciting football imaginable. And in cold weather and all this other, it's great. I mean, I love the NFL playoffs have been a gift the last few years. Big games right down to the wire, passionate. I mean, I love the playoffs. I get it. I don't see the college game ever going that way. If you wanted to kind of make an argument, what it's going to affect is the traditional schedules. And I'm talking Thanksgiving weekend. I think once we were, and maybe not if we end up with something different that we'll talk about later, but when you end up with Ohio State and Michigan playing one week and turning around and playing for a conference title the next, and then they're both in the playoff, and I'll say Auburn, Alabama. You know, I don't know if Ole Miss, Mississippi State will ever get there, but there's a Texas A&M could be, you know, Southern Cal, Notre Dame. When you're talking about that, then yes, it does diminish that part of the regular season. It's a simple solution. You just move those games. You know, you don't ever have a scenario. It makes it very unlikely you're going to play one team one week and turn around and play them again the next in the championship game. And that's a function of TV wanting, and the conferences, frankly, wanting the best matchup in their championship games. When we had divisions and teams were in opposite division or the same division, didn't matter, did it? So that can be fixed, but that's the only part of it I see. I don't think we're ever going to go back to the point where, you know, and the media coverage and hype is one thing, right? Like the 14 million TV, you're not going to get that for Arkansas versus Ole Miss if one team has 4 losses, one team has 3, and they're fighting for that Outback Bowl. You know, you're not going to get that. Those games still mean a lot, though. And sure. People watch them. People watch bowl games that are atrocious matchups, right?
Yeah.
People still watch, but to those fan bases, the importance is still going to be there. I think we're decades away from fan bases being eroded. I think conference realignment and this craziness with bi-coastal conferences and stuff, that's going to erode a fan base quicker than a 12-team playoff will.
Yeah. Again, if you want to die on that hill, that like these games have been ruined by an expansion playoff, then I don't know what game you were watching Saturday. I honestly don't know. And by the way, you still have to have a great year. Like a 2-loss team doesn't guarantee you a trip to the playoff, even if you're in the SEC.
I mean,
you know, like, and 3 knocks you out completely. So it's like these games still friggin' matter. And you watch 2 first-round pick quarterbacks, I believe, and Carson Beck and Jalen Milroe, they don't have to give max effort to still make a lot of money in the future. But damn it, they couldn't have given any more of what they have to win that game. I realize Beck had a bad one in some respects, but you can't question his effort. You can't, well, in the back of their mind, they were thinking, with an expanded playoff, this game isn't really no, that never, ever, ever crossed the mind of a single player or coach participating in that game. It was all out. It was balls to the wall to try to win that game. So
now, we may have a situation where this is the first of 3 games.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot too.
But I mean, but hey, hell, do it. Who cares?
Well, I mean,
they do it in the NFL. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's. I just don't think it's ever going to get to the point where, it's meaningless. I just don't think that.
No. And I'm sorry, you'll never convince me that. I mean, there's some people still saying the BCS was a great system. I can't help you if you believe the 20 years of the BCS and you want to believe the narrative that, well, one played 2, based on who? Based on what computer? Based on the Sagarin poll? Come on. All right, we got to get to the JC5. We got to get to a timeout. It is JC and Morgan. We are glad to be back, albeit a couple of days later than normal, and we will continue after a quick timeout.
Morning, Carl. Usual?
Yeah.
Your oldest was in here the other day. Said the 2 of you took a trip down to my neck of the woods. How'd that go?
You might as well give me one of those Carolina cards while you're at it.
I knew I liked that one.
Yeah.
How you doing, my friend?
Thanks.
Hey, Carl. Congratulations.
See you tomorrow, ready?
You bet.
You want to die on that hill. Mike here for our friends at MG&A Wealth. It's never a bad time to have someone on your side for all your financial needs. You need a trustworthy partner who has a true understanding of your situation in order to help you with smart and practical solutions. Since 1984, MG&A Wealth has helped their clients manage not just their wealth, but their lives. Today, as a nationally recognized wealth management firm, their team of pros remains dedicated to serving your best interests with an emphasis on personal attention and customized solutions. MG&A Wealth has clients all across the country, and they all get results. Don't put it off any longer. Call our friends at MG&A Wealth at 954-289-9000. That's 954-289-9000. MGAwealth.com is the website. They do more than manage wealth. They help manage lives.
Listen up. This is for construction professionals, contractors, facility managers, or do-it-yourself homeowners. SitePro Rentals is ready to equip your upcoming project. We rent construction equipment for any size job. Boom and scissor lifts, telehandlers, skid steers, excavators, air compressors, generators, even small tools and equipment. SitePro has you covered. If you are ready for better equipment rental, call SitePro and rent from the local, friendly, easy to do business with equipment professionals. Call 972-RENT-NOW. That's 972-736-8669 to rent the newest equipment in the Atlanta market. Call 972-RENT-NOW or visit siteprorentals.com.
We're passionate about making sure that the Nest and Wild mattress is the best it can be. Made well and made right. Right here in Tupelo, Mississippi. So how can we do all that? Work. Hard work. And that means something. The Nest and Wild mattress is a movement. It's a pride in where you come from and where you're going. So get comfortable. Because this movement is just beginning.
JC and Morgan, presented in part by the most comfortable mattress on the planet, Nest and Wild, and also by SitePro Rentals. When you're renting equipment, it's important to have local, easy-to-do business with friends in the industry who carry the newest equipment. Of course, the industry I'm talking about is construction. They are construction pro friendly, if you will. They create efficiency for you and your project job site. The team at SitePro Rentals will help you with their reliable service, transparent pricing. That's always a nice thing. And again, great equipment overall. It's real simple, and they are across the country. They can help you. 972 Rent Now. Got one right here in the Atlanta area. They're big in Texas as well and so many other places. 972 Rent Now, 972-736-8669 for better equipment rental. Speaking of Atlanta, somebody asked in chat row, I think it was Craig, are you guys okay with power? Yeah, we're fine here. We had a ton of rain. And JC, you've been in my house. You know my house backs up to a creek. That's always a little bit concerning when it starts getting up there and then hitting the grass, but they vented or they constructed an underground tunnel that kind of helps.
So they did pull the tunnel this time.
They pulled the lever. Yeah, if they didn't pull the lever, there would have been some issues. I would have.
I sit there on Mike's back porch one day and watching the dogs, and it's raining, and that creek starts coming up. I'm like, is this normal? Yeah. So I called Mike said, don't worry about it. It's fine. So I go back inside. I come back out about 15 minutes later. All the water's gone.
Yeah.
I'm like, is this a miracle? What happened? And Mike explained, well, they have a duct. They just open the gate and it drains back in. So thankfully, because I didn't know I didn't know if the duct had gotten overwhelmed or not with all the rain. So
I was getting a little bit concerned. You just keep watching it pile up. And again, I have a lot of friends in South Carolina and the west coast of Florida that also got hit, and some of them dodged a bullet, and some of them have certainly gotten some damage, and obviously been more than inconvenienced by lack of power, lack of internet. When you don't have those two things, it's really hard to function in life. I mean, safety is obviously going to be the most important thing, but then you also you need these things just for everyday life. So again, hopefully we are getting closer and closer to normal for all those people, and the people in near the mountains of, I've been to Asheville a number of times to call the Southern Conference Championship. It's a beautiful city, and you just never expect flooding to be an issue there. But they got pummeled, and I think it was Jamie on the other show, a part of the Chief Sports Network, that warned the day before it all started getting hairy that those rivers, there was going to be some major overflow issues, and obviously there has been, and hopefully they'll be given the attention they deserve, even though it'll be days late. Hopefully they'll do what's right to help those fine folks.
Yeah,
all right.
Places, like Chimney Rock in North
I've
Carolina.
been to the wife and I we went to Chimney Rocks. It was beautiful. Beautiful.
My dad and mom had a date there one time because my mom always told the story. My dad was being a daredevil and tried to get outside the rope and look at me. Yeah, he's the type of guy that would have fallen into the Grand Canyon probably. But he had great coordination. He was a quarterback, so daredevil. He's a daredevil like his old man. But
were you conceived at Chimney Rock? Is that what you're saying?
Nah, no, probably.
Okay.
I think I was a baby or maybe not conceived yet. I'm not sure. I'm not sure of the timeline. I've just been told the story. Lake Lure, where Dirty Dancing was filmed, which is the next Patrick Swayze movie they'll make an awful remake of.
Let's hope not.
I don't care about that one. I mean, Ghost would suck. I mean, but as far as the ones that. But I mean, you can't redo time anyway. We can talk about that later. I know
you could do Jennifer Grey post nose job, and it would be a whole other angle.
Literally.
Yeah, exactly. You get to see more of the set because a lot of it was blocked back when that was originally done. Okay, I got to stop talking before I get in trouble. Time for the JC5.
It's time for the top topics in the sport. We bring the JC5. Number one.
So I gave Mike a homework assignment 30 minutes before we aired. So this talk of the college super league, and there's some pretty heavy hitters behind it. Jimmy Haslam, who owns the Browns, and Pilot, and super rich dudes, and Gordon G, who used to be at Ohio State. He's West Virginia's president, and a couple of conference commissioners. I mean, some guys, are behind this super league idea. Basically, would it be 72 teams that don't change, and then 12 that kind of go up and down? geographical divisions, 5 division games, 12. I mean, we don't have time to go through it. But Mike, so this concept, here's my take on it. Great. If they do this, super. It would save, like with the issues we have in college football now, to me, it would save the number one issue, which is keeping it a very locally focused type of sport, which is what makes it special. That's what the song says, from downtown LA to Starkville SIP. That's what makes it special. It's not special for Stanford to go to Syracuse and then Clemson back to back. That's not special. The Stanford Cal game special, right? It would keep that there. I think it would make sense. You'd have a lot of even distribution of money and resources. However, I would put the chances that Petiti and Sankey and the leaders of the 2 power conferences sign off on something like this at about 3%, maybe even 0.0. What say you, Mike?
You just answered where I was going. The reason why I saw the link that you sent me, it's very nicely coordinated. You've got geographical pods or whatever you want to call them, and it's like, wouldn't this be grand? And who is going to put that together? Paul Blart, the mall cop that runs the NCAA? No, they're powerless. They're feckless, as everybody is seeing firsthand right now. Greg Sankey and Tony Petiti are meeting. I can't remember the exact day. Is it this week, I believe?
Yeah, it's in Nashville, but yeah.
Yeah, so they're meeting. Did you notice no one else is on that list? The Big 12 commissioner is not on that list. Jim Phillips of the ACC is not on that list. Teresa Gould of the Pac-2 conference is not on that list. Neither is Gloria Navarez, who continues to get rejected at the Mountain West, not on that list. And my point is that it's a Sankey Petiti world, and we're all just living in it. And so they're talking about things that are scheduling relevant. I wouldn't be surprised if you could one day see if and when the SEC gets to 9, if you had what we've had in basketball for years, which is like one weekend on the calendar, an SEC Big Ten Challenge Week. How cool would that be? Where teams go mano a mano, SEC versus Big Ten. Now, logistically, that's hard to do, but what a mate. You want to talk about ratings and paydays and all that stuff? And again, with a 12-team playoff, coaches aren't as scared to do that. But I think it would require the SEC going to 9.
See, that would
I
be
can see
something
your
to put Thanksgiving weekend.
Well,
if you,
that
would avoid the repeat games, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I have no doubt that those 2 guys are well aware that they are sitting on top of the mountain or standing, depending on how comfortable they may or may not be. They are the NFC and AFC commissioners, if you will. And in a lot of ways, and I hate to say this, and we cover it all on this show, so we are not elitists, as we like to say, but the rest of it is like an XFL. It really is. There's just the money. We are at a point now where the TV money, and I'm rounding numbers here, is going to be roughly $80 million a year for SEC and Big Ten schools, and about 40 for the ACC. This is why Florida State and Clemson are desperately trying to get out, even though it's clearly not working. That gap will continue to put SEC and Big Ten programs in a much better stature, because where do you think a lot of that money goes? Well, nowadays, after you pay the 22 off the top for revenue sharing to the players, then there's NIL. And we can shape NIL in any way you want to describe it. It's pay for play. It just is. And so if I've got $40 million more every year to put toward players than the next guy, it's like Bill Parcells said, if you want me to build the meal, cook the meal, let me shop for the groceries. Well, if I go to a Publix or if I go to a Kroger and you give me $100 and you give JC $50, JC is probably a better shopper than I am, but I can tell you this, I'm coming home with better ingredients, and while I'm not a great cook, somebody's going to help me cook a better meal than JC is going to cook. So that's number one here. All this other stuff, and yeah, you still get people like these soccer fans. My goodness, stop with the relegate. Like, that's never happening. You've been watching too many episodes of Ted Lasso for crying out loud. It's not going to be like, well, Vanderbilt's going to be relegated to the Sun Belt because they had another bad year. It's never happening. Just stop with the madness.
Yeah, it's fans praying for that for their rival. You know, that would be ultimate. Like, I don't know. All right, on to number two.
Number 2.
Okay, how bad was in your opinion? Maybe you don't think it was bad. The way the Virginia Tech Miami game ended Friday night.
All right, I know we're in the interest of time. I'm going to go through this real quickly. Awful. And you know, I talked to some NCAA officials. In fact, I know one ACC official, and I haven't gotten his opinion on it yet. He's not just an official; he's a referee. If they would have called it incomplete initially, nobody would have had a problem with it because the video was very inconclusive. But you called it a catch. And quite frankly, if you just slow it down frame by frame by frame by frame, it looks like a catch. But to overturn that, you had no basis to overturn that. It's a bad look. It's a bad call. It's a bad day for ACC officiating to make that move. And you've got people that are in the control room that is their job to just sit back and look at that. And they looked at it for 5 minutes. I don't care if they would have looked at it for a half hour as long as you get it right. But they desperately were trying to find something to overturn it because, granted, they could make the argument, I'm not really sure this is a catch. And I wouldn't disagree with them. Based on the video, you couldn't ascertain 1,000% that was a catch. But it was ruled on the field a catch. The official on the spot, who might have had a better angle than any TV camera could get because the TV cameras, when there's a mass of humanity and there's like 7 bodies all jumping for the ball, cameras are blocked. We got pylon cam and we got this cam and we got that cam, but we don't have a cam right there that close. The referee or the back judge, whatever, he's there. He called it. He went with his instinct. He went with his gut. You couldn't have overturned that. You did not have enough. They did. I would say that was a miss.
Yeah, and that's the rule. You can overturn it if there's irrefutable video evidence. Otherwise, the call stands. There's no planet where that was irrefutable. You could interpret it however you wanted, but it wasn't. It was based on opinion, not fact. I think the fact it took so long really, really makes it look shady. So yet another.
Let me ask you a question. If it was in Blacksburg and it was Miami, undefeated Miami, playoff team Miami, ACC favorite Miami, who throws that, and initially it's called a catch, you think they're overturning it?
There's no way in the southwestern hills of Blacksburg that would have not been Miami would have gotten it. I mean, that just reinforces conspiracy theories because quite frankly, there's no other way to explain it. Everybody's got inherent bias, but that sucked. And on top of that, it was just a disappointing night because I thought Miami would go out and play well. I thought Miami actually had a really good football team, but you know what? Here we go again. If they don't play better, they're not getting to the playoff. It's going to be Clemson's world again in the ACC.
It would have been so the dog to spit the bit in a game like that when everybody, including myself, I mean, I was hyping up Cam Ward, and I've been saying it's Miami's conference to lose. So if I'm wrong, I'll admit it. But that would have been so Miami to go ahead and kick that. There's one key play that no one's talking about, and I can't remember where I saw this, somewhere on Twitter. Some guy managed to get this. Cam Ward, because I'm watching that game live. Cam Ward throws an awful pass. Virginia Tech, it's deflected. Virginia Tech defensive back intercepts it. He's racing down the sideline. He's got a convoy. It's going to be a pick six. If it's a pick six, this game is over. There is a wide receiver, and I can't remember his name, from Miami, who is on the opposite side of the field. The field is 53 yards wide, 53 and a quarter, if I'm not mistaken. He is way out of the play. And it would have been so, like, nobody would have noticed it if he loafed it back. This dude is running like a 4.2 40, horizontally 53 yards, and then vertically 80 yards to catch him. It was unbelievable. And that was the difference in the game, because then Virginia Tech does not score a touchdown. I can't remember if that was the same drive. They tried a stupid fake field goal. That was a really dumb call. Time and place. That's not 20/20 hindsight. That's just knowing when you go for that, when you don't. And they blew the game. But anyway, watch that if you can dial it up, folks. It's incredible. The kid that made that play may have saved Miami's chances at a playoff berth and a national championship.
Number 3.
Okay, so we know how Bobby Petrino Part 2 ended at Louisville. We know Johnny Majors Part 2 at Pitt, John Robinson Part 2 at good old Southern Cal, Mac Brown Part 2 quickly circling the drain. So I'll ask you this. I'll take you to the birthplace of college football, Mike. Is Greg Schiano Part 2 at Rutgers going to end up being the exception? It is a tougher job now in the Big Ten than it ever has been. They're undefeated. They're playing good football, and it's his style too.
Are they going to be the exception to what rule?
To the don't go home again rule. You
don't
take the same job twice, because it always ends poorly. I mean, when Petrino had a Heisman winner and then 3 years later he's getting 77-3 by Clemson, I was like, yeah, well, it really does not work out.
You know what? I think it is. Schiano, people forget Schiano did an amazing job the first time around. Then he gets offered the Bucs job. It wasn't terrible in the NFL, but it clearly was not meant to be there. Then he essentially has the Tennessee job. Tennessee Nation goes, no, we need a Tennessee guy to make this call. Phil Fulmer, who do you got? Phil Fulmer gave you the most embarrassing coach in Tennessee football in, I don't know, the last 50 years. So I think he's still a good football coach, and what he sells for that program works. It's just it's just a good fit. By the way, I mean, do you realize the undefeated teams right now in college football, like Army, Navy, Pitt, Indiana? More on Indiana. I'm going to do a deep dive on Coach Cignetti. Rutgers, BYU is 5-0. Iowa State, UNLV with their second quarterback. Remember, that was a big story. Didn't turn out to be relevant. And, of course, the Dukes of James Madison. It's a crazy year, but there's still great stories. Like, it's the beauty of college football. You can have Georgia, Alabama, and that's still like, whoa, different level. And then still have all these other great stories that I still love to talk about and still love to follow, and I think most college football fans do. But, yes, I think he's the exception to your rule. Number 4.
All right, number 4. Speaking of circling thy drain, Auburn. They found a way to lose Saturday. And I didn't expect them to. I mean, hey, look, I've gotten burned by Auburn all year. I talked about how they could be 5-0 because they had 5 straight home games. I didn't see any of those games that they shouldn't have won. I certainly thought they should have beaten Oklahoma. Oklahoma does not have an offense. Auburn's pretty good on defense. For a long time, it looked that way. And then lo and behold, Brent Venables calls it Sooner Magic. I call it the football gods or God himself. I don't know, raining down terror on Hugh Freeze. So here's my question. They're 2-3, and they've already used up 5 home games, Mike. 5, right? They have a gauntlet coming up starting this weekend in Athens. That's not against a pissed off Georgia team that has owned them through the years. It doesn't get any easier. It lightens up toward the end. They're probably not going to a bowl this year. That's a lot of losing. This feels Billy Napier-esque. And they could start losing recruits over. So the next 2 weeks, it's at Georgia off week, at Missouri, at Kentucky, who's resurgent. The kill zone comes in, Louisiana Monroe, Texas A&M comes in, then at Alabama. There may not be but one more win on the schedule, and they could go winless in the SEC. And I'm not being ugly by saying that. I mean, this team is not. I mean, there's every team on the schedule could beat them. I think that's the case for a lot of teams this year. Chances are they'll upset somebody, but will Auburn move on quickly? Like, will they move on that quickly on the heels of that buyout?
A lot to unpack there. First off, they snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. The pick six at that stage in the game, I don't know.
Why? You're a quarterback guy. That had to kill you.
Yeah, it's just like
what are you doing?
What are you doing? Like, he got the starting job back. He's clearly better than the other guy for now. Meanwhile, you've got Hugh throwing quarterbacks under the bus. And I don't know if you caught the press conference. He basically just threw. It's easy to throw Brian Harsin under the bus because Auburn fan, like, if you could just take a pill and black that out of your memory bank, you would do. And we don't encourage drug use on this show. Let me just say for the record, I'm talking figuratively. So please, kids, just say no. But you would just wipe your memory of the Brian Harsin era. So it's easy to just take shots at Brian Harsin, but he basically just said, look, Brian Harsin left me with a bunch of ragtag guys and we're going to fix it.
Look, there's no question Brian Harsin could not recruit. I mean, it was terrible. I mean,
right.
There were a few players. I mean, he kind of, I don't even know what he was thinking half the time. And a lot of coaches on his staff that where SEC coaches didn't know what he was doing. I mean, it was a bad.
I don't know. I don't disagree with that. But JC,
transfer portal, dude.
Exactly. This is year 2, and you're in the portal. You can't blame that on the other coaches anymore.
And this team was a touchdown away from beating Georgia last year, and a miracle away from upsetting Alabama.
Yes.
And their roster coming into this year on paper, with the exception of quarterback, was better.
Right.
I mean, they went and got some dudes out of the portal. They got Cam Coleman, the freshman receiver, that's pretty good. It just looks like a mess. He looks like a mess. He doesn't even look like Hugh Freeze anymore. He doesn't look like the guy that was, portrayed in The Blind Side, right? People forget.
Well,
Hugh Freeze was the Blind Side high school coach.
Yeah. I know. I have a lot of issues with that movie in general, but that's a whole other story. Hugh is not going to overwhelm people with his personality in general. Now, let me just say this for the record. I would have hired Hugh Freeze if I was Auburn. I would have hired Hugh Freeze if I was a number of schools.
I thought it was a fantastic hire.
Fantastic
I thought it was
hire.
No-brainer.
He did his penance. We've seen this with other coaches. Yeah. He did it. He did his penance. He got out of ethical jail, if you will, and earned his way back. And everything that he did at Ole Miss, combined with what he did at Liberty, told you he was a good coach, a good play. I have a lot of respect for head coaches that actually can call plays in this era of delegation, where some guys that know nothing about coaching are more than just are nothing more than figureheads that delegate everything to high-priced coordinators, and then they sit there and give you the rah-rah. That's great. He's earned his station in life as a coach. However, it's been a rough go. Now, I will say this. I've known John Cohen for a long time, going back to when he was an SEC baseball coach at Kentucky, led the Wildcats to their, I think, first SEC championship, if not the first one in forever, in 2006. Then he went back to Mississippi State. He much like a Ray Tanner at South Carolina, always had ambitions of being in the administrative role. I think John Cohen is a sharp guy. He's done a lot of good things already at Auburn. And he went on Feinbaum, I think, on Friday, and I saw the interview, and basically laid out chapter and verse. We knew this was going to be a a slow burn of improvement. Like this was not going to happen overnight. He mentioned 53 some odd players that had already bolted, from those recruiting classes before. My point to that is, whether you agree or disagree, is that John Cohen is standing by his guy. You're not seeing that right now in Gainesville. You mentioned Billy Napier. Billy doesn't have that track record. Billy did a good job at Louisiana, and that's it.
Yeah, he's also in year 3, though, and I could see Hugh fired next year if it doesn't get better.
Look, it's Auburn. A call from Yellowwood,
And look, dude, here's the thing, too, about it, man. It's like, okay, yeah, I understand. I know full well Brian Harsin did not do a good job, did not recruit well. It was a mess. It was a bad hire. They let the wrong guy make the hire, and that AD's not there anymore making hires. They got a good one in John Cohen that actually knows coaching and things like that. And I would have hired Hugh Freeze in a heartbeat. But look, man, the reason you hire Hugh Freeze is he's a turnaround artist. He turned around the little school he was at before Arkansas State. He won at Arkansas State. Let me just say this. Houston Nutt, pretty good football coach himself, 6-18 and 1-15 in the SEC at Ole Miss. It bottomed out completely. A lot of Orgeron's guys that he won with left, and then he didn't recruit all that well. Hugh comes in there and takes him to the Birmingham Bowl first year. I thought a similar thing was happening at Auburn last season with the close games and close losses. But then, dude, like they lost to New Mexico, the kill zone, not the Nashville kill zone, which is a nicer kill zone. The Las Cruces, we're begging the Mountain West or the Mountain West to let us in. That kill zone, beat him by 3 touchdowns. Okay, so fine. All right, that happens sometimes. Sometimes you lose. Ed Orgeron lost to Troy at home and then won a national championship. Miami of Ohio beat LSU in 1986. Was one of only 2 losses. LSU went to Sugar Bowl that year. It happens, right? But then they lose to Maryland in the Music City. They don't show up. I was getting married that day. I watched almost every play of that game, having beers. And Maryland, without Tua's brother, beat the crap out of them. So they don't show up there. They don't show up for Cal. They blow it against Arkansas. I think Arkansas may be a better team. And then against a very one-dimensional Oklahoma team with a true freshman quarterback making his first start at home at your place, in your crib, you blow an 11-point lead because your quarterback throws it directly to the other linebacker. That's not the Ole Miss Hugh Freeze. This is the Ole Miss Hugh Freeze was throwing bombs against Bama. I mean, I just don't know. So I don't know what's going to happen. I don't disagree with you, though, and I know we'll move on. We have better things to talk about than Auburn.
Well, we got limited time. Number 5.
Okay. The state of North Carolina. Duke, obviously, right now is the best team in North Carolina. App State, garbage by comparison. And I'm not being ugly to them because I know their Boone is in Western North Carolina. Got hit hard. But man, oh man, how good of a job, in your opinion, just 10 seconds, North Carolina as a football job, A, B, C, C+. Where would you rate that overall? Not their athletic department, but the football job, because it's probably going to open.
I'd say like B-. I've done games there. Facilities are nice. It's like a lot of people always want to do this with Kentucky. Well, they're really good at basketball, so they don't care about football. That's ridiculously just dumb analysis. It's not remotely true. They would love to be good at football. They do have some tradition there. Lawrence Taylor, Kelvin Bryant, you can go back to Mac Brown's first run when he had those ridiculous defenses full of NFL guys and Carl Torbush, but they're always seemingly, when you look at it, you could make the argument, JC, there's not that much difference between them and NC State. They just can't get over that proverbial hump. So they got a lot of money. They got facilities, like I mentioned. They're all in, but if I'm a head coach, if I'm a hot name and I'm looking at that job, one of the first things these coaches all do is they say, well, as cocky as they may be, did anybody else win there consistently? And if they haven't, well, why am I going to be any different? Like, clearly there's something that's off with that job that is a blockade of being a power in college football. So I'll go with B-.
All right. Cool. Well, we got to get to a break. So
We'll
14
take a quick
minutes to roll through three things.
We'll roll through three things on the other side. Quick timeout, JC and more.
Hey, folks, want to tell you about our friends at Titan Construction Group really quick. They're a Mid-Atlantic-based general contractor, specializes in retail, restaurant, and office construction. TCG strives to separate itself from other general contractors by adding value every step of the process. From project budgeting to estimation, value engineering to construction, they focus on those relationships and not the transaction. Titan builds partnerships one project at a time. Among their clients are Starbucks, Crumble Cookie, Blake Pizza, Home Goods, 15 plus years experience, based in Midlothian, Virginia, and contracted in Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. So get on their website, TitanCGinc.com. That's TitanCGinc.com. Get in touch with Brad if you're in need of a general contractor that focuses on going above and beyond for their clients. That's Titan Construction Group, a proud sponsor of the JC and Morgan podcast.
Listen up. This is for construction professionals, contractors, facility managers, or do-it-yourself homeowners. Site Pro Rentals is ready to equip your upcoming project. We rent construction equipment for any size job. Boom and scissor lifts, telehandlers, skid steers, excavators, air compressors, generators, even small tools and equipment. Site Pro has you covered. If you are ready for better equipment rental, call Site Pro and rent from the local, friendly, easy to do business with equipment professionals. Call 972-RENT-NOW. That's 972-736-8669 to rent the newest equipment in the Atlanta market. Call 972-RENT-NOW or visit siteprorentals.com.
We're passionate about making sure that the Nest and Wild mattress is the best it can be. Made well and made right. Right here in Tupelo, Mississippi. So how can we do all that? Work. Hard work. And that means something. The Nest and Wild mattress is a movement. It's a pride in where you come from and where you're going. So get comfortable, because this movement is just beginning.
All right, we are rolling through here, 34 minutes past the hour, and it is JC and Morgan, and it's time for the boss. I love the James Brown cover band. Like, this is... I miss James Brown. For those that didn't have us last week, we went through a whole explanation as why, because we're on YouTube, we can't play that music. It's a whole ordeal. I don't know, but we got dinged. Somebody threw a flag. So here we are with the next best thing, the James Brown cover band. Okay, who was the boss this past weekend? Well, for one thing, Alabama was. They're now 6-1 against Kirby and just continue to have the upper hand in that rivalry. Now, Georgia did beat them in a national championship game, as JC mentioned, and that will always be the ultimate trump card in a lot of ways. But you think of some of the leads that they've blown. Obviously, this is a different story. Georgia came back after an Alabama blown lead, but 2017 championship game, Georgia led 13-0, 20-7, 23-20. And then Devontae Smith, of course, with the walk-off. 2018, they led 28-14 in the SEC championship game. Alabama came back and won. 2020, they led 24-17. Alabama came back and won. So Alabama's been the boss against Georgia, no matter how you slice it. Now, maybe Georgia still gets their revenge. Who knows? But one thing is for sure, Alabama's been the boss in that rivalry. Ryan Williams was the boss on Saturday. It's not supposed to be this easy. I don't care if he's 21. He just happens to be 17. He's got 462 yards receiving on 16 grabs. He's averaging 28.9 yards a reception. It's not supposed to be this easy. He looks like a lock to be the first 1,000-yard true freshman receiver at Bama since Amari Cooper in 2012. Amari Cooper was a bad man. I think Ryan Williams is better. I just do. By the way, another freshman, Xavier Brown, made the key pick to end the game. I don't know if he's 18 or 19. I will say this, for the Georgia receiver, you've got like 5 inches on your guy. That's a 50-50 ball. If you don't at least get your hands on it, that's on you. That was not the worst throw in the world from Carson Beck, who did have some bad throws. But that's a pretty lackluster effort as a wideout. When you're on a 50-50 ball, you can't just be out of the play. And he was out of the play and made it a rather easy pick for Brown, who had position and a terrific play. He got toasted. If you notice, there was a lot of cover 0, cover 1 in that game. They didn't go too high safety, so what that allows is what you don't see in the NFL, a ton of big pass plays. Because it's just man-to-man. You're leaving your guys out on an island, and when you do that against some of those studs, you're going to have some huge pass plays. Jalen Milroe was the boss, 491 total yards. Need I say more? Miller Moss of Southern Cal, 4 touchdowns, 308 yards on 30 for 45, 38-21 win over Wisconsin. What the heck has happened to Wisconsin football? K-State quarterback Avery Johnson. Not too many people talking about old Avery Johnson. He's good. He threw for 3, he ran for 2, and they blew out Oklahoma State 42-20. BYU receiver Darius Lassiter, 8 grabs, 120 yards, and a score. They beat Baylor 34-28. They're 5-0. They're 2-0 in the Big 12. BYU football is announcing its Mormon presence with authority in Big 12 country. SMU quarterback Kevin Jennings, remember they benched the starter. He just dissected Florida State. Again, a lackluster effort by the Seminoles. He threw for 254, 3 touchdowns, no picks, 42-16 win over the Seminoles. And my man Ashton Genty of Boise State against Wazoo. You can't say that they're not playing anybody at Boise. Against Wazoo, 26 carries, 259 yards, 4 touchdowns. If this guy doesn't get invited to New York, if he keeps doing what he's doing and he doesn't get invited to New York, I'm going to have a problem. He's the nation's leading rusher with 845 yards. He's got 13 touchdowns in 4 games. He obliterated Oregon and Washington State's defenses, and he's averaging a first down every carry, 10.3 yards. My goodness. He was terrific on the boss as well. And we don't have time for deep dive, but I'll just say Curt Cignetti in Indiana. If Curt Cignetti was younger, he would be mentioned for a ton of jobs. But he's in his 60s, mid-60s, and I don't know if that's going to be attractive enough. Did a great job at JMU and Indiana. Indiana is freaking 5-0, and that is the boss, presented by the fine folks of MG&A Wealth. They're the boss when it comes to all your financial needs. Call Sean today at 954-289-9000, mgawealth.com, privately owned since 1984. They will take care of your investment portfolio, make you a lot of money, make you feel good about things. There's a reason why they've been able to do it as an independent for so long with clients all across this great country of ours. Again, they've been doing it since 1984. MGA Wealth, 954-289-9000. That's Sean, mgawealth.com. Also, quickly, the G5 John top 10, 10-1. San Jose State. JC, if you have a violent argument about any of these, throw something at your screen and speak up. Sam Houston State, number 9. They beat Texas State, who just gave the Heisman to the Mountain West. They're staying Sunbelt. I would too. Army, 4-0. They're number 8. Liberty, 4-0. They're number 7. Memphis is number 6. Tulane is 5. Navy is 4. Army and Navy are undefeated. America. Number 3, James Madison. Number 2, Boise State, beating Washington State 45-24. And number 1, UNLV. It was the story of the week last week. They throw in the backup after losing their starting quarterback over an NIL deal. And they go out and they just take care of Fresno State 59-14 on Saturday. And that is G5 John's top 10. JC, some closing shots, parting shots, closing thoughts, anything else? A recipe, a haiku poem? What do you have?
Haiku, yeah, no. Shout out. I mean, look, I got to give credit where credit's due. I did not think Colorado would go in there and whip UCF like it did. They did. You talked about front running teams. Well, they're back at 4 wins where they were last year. So
that's right.
If they can win some more, they'll probably keep playing well. If they
Big 12 race is going to be a lot of fun, as we thought it would be.
Lose out. Arizona had a big win over Utah. 47-year-old Cam Rising. He came to Utah when Mercedes Lewis came in the NFL. It seems he's hurt again. I mean, it's a different kind of injury, the laceration, I think, on his hand. So he was out, but Arizona's defense played well. Shout out to the new coach there. They've had kind of a tough go of it early, but they got a big win against the Utes. So there's now, as we suspected, like you said, the Big 12 BYU is really only undefeated. I mean, it's wide open as we thought. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to this weekend, and then next weekend is going to be very epic. And for all you folks that listen to our other show that jump in the chat box, remember, we're not going to answer any. I mean, we answer all those questions in the next show. And, if we'd like for the conversation to be steered more towards general college football, it's okay if you talk amongst yourselves sometimes. But just wanted to remind people of that in chat below. We certainly appreciate all you guys coming in. And if you have a general college football question, we'll certainly answer it here. But if not, hold it for the next one, because
the next one, of course,
3 hours, man.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't want to blow it all here, because we have a lot of different folks from around the country that listen to this one. That shout to including our friend from Purdue that talking massive smack against.
Purdue Kenny is
Notre Dame.
I don't think Purdue Kenny's going to be in the chat box anytime soon. After
he's welcome. He's welcome.
He's still welcome. He's still welcome, as are all the other fans at least last week. A terrific variety in that respect. Congratulations to Kentucky, what they did to Ole Miss. Kentucky reminded people that defense is legit, and Mark Stoops does know how to coach defense. As much as the fans get tired of his offense, Ole Miss, a big one at South Carolina. That's a big one for Lane. Lane Kiffin, for all of his swagger and everything he's done, and all the rumors, of course, of him being highly. Auburn wanted him. Florida wants him now. His record against top 25 opponents is not great. It just isn't. And that was definitely a letdown at home against Kentucky. And I'll just say this in closing. It's not going to be a banner week of games this week. But, again, take a sneak peek to October 12th. Whoa, Nelly. There's a lot of blockbusters in that one. That's going to do it for us. Our thanks to, again, Mad Dog, who has been battling all kinds of technical inhibitors because of the hurricane, working without power, working without internet. Looks like he's got at least one of the two back. And our thanks to all of you for tuning in once again. We'll be back to our regularly scheduled day of Monday next week. For JC, for Mad Dogs, Mike, so long. We'll see you next time on JC and Morgan.